Yay, Karen, thanks for being on the podcast today.
Hi, Lizanne. Thank you for having me.
It's so lovely to have you. I'm really looking forward to our conversation. And for those who are listening to the audio, we've got a little bit of color matching going with this pink coral
Yeah,
colors. Definitely in the autumn mood here in Scotland. Yeah, so
layering up.
exactly. Starting to take out the coats. Um, so Corin, I want to ask you a question that well, actually, before we start with that, can you start by just giving a little bit of information as to who you are, what's your background, and what do you do?
Yeah, of course, yeah. So I'm Karen Bennett, and I'm a brand strategist and brand designer. I help small business owners the way I put it is to discover the soul in their brand and then share that through sort of expertly created brand design. My background was in corporate services, actually, in financial services,
Mm.
but doing marketing in that sphere. And I just found that my creativity wasn't very, it wasn't getting used to its best extent, I guess. And just, I felt quite boxed in that role. It was more like project management than
Hmm.
actually being creative and using my creative skills.
Mm.
So yeah, I had a bit of a 360 and retrained as a graphic designer and set up my business 2.5 years ago. So yeah, here I am and loving it.
Wow. Thanks for sharing. That's it in a nutshell. I can hear that there's a lot there in terms of your journey and your story, and I look forward to unpacking that a bit more.
Okay.
So Corin, you bring in the idea of creativity and background working in corporate and now working in the creative space. Have you always seen yourself as a creative? Yeah, when did you start seeing yourself as a creative?
Yeah, I think I've always had that in me. I've always enjoyed creativity from a really young age. Art, writing, reading, those were my favorite areas, I guess. And then as I started to get a little bit older, as I went into secondary school, um, I had a bit of an experience with a teacher that, and I know that we've spoken about this story before, but I didn't really appreciate it at the time as being that important in my life. But I can look back at it now and think, wow, this was a sort of pivotal moment when I started to move away from that creative side of myself. And what happened was I was in an art class one day. We'd been asked to do a homework, which was painting a little bit of a landscape, just of your choice. And unfortunately, my teacher decided to hold up my piece of art as how not to paint, an example of how not to paint. So, yeah, I think that was a little bit crushing for me at the time. And um, I can say quite openly now that that's when I started to move away from that creative side of myself. I ended up doing an economics degree and
Wow.
moving into the world of financial services. And albeit there, it was in marketing, but it definitely wasn't in the creative side of that, as I explained earlier. So yeah, I think I've always been a creative person. I've always had it in me, but um, there was something that was telling me it wasn't a career choice for me.
Mhm.
And it was only really, starting my business 2.5 years ago. Well, I retrained sort of 5 years ago that I was able to delve back into it and really embrace that side of me now.
Mhm.
So yeah, I've definitely always had it in me, but had many years, I think, of just choosing not to explore it and not to really live it.
Mm.
Whereas now I'm sort of in my discovery era and obviously doing this as a job, but not just that. I'm embracing all types of art and creativity. I've been to one of your workshops, which I absolutely loved. And going to more museums and art galleries and yeah, just exploring that side of myself again. It's been really good fun.
It sounds very expansive, and I love how you claim it as your discovery era. I think there's so much possibility that come with that, and just listening to you talk, the yeah, sort of the openness that arrives in this space, and before we delve into that a bit more, I'm curious as to how you experienced yourself when you were still working in your corporate job. What kind of person were you back then, and um, how did you how did you realize that actually something needs to shift?
Yeah, okay, so I would probably say I was quite passive in my career at that stage. So it was, you know, it was like I just sort of fell into different roles. Um, and, as I say, it was more like a project management sort of style of job, where, obviously there's a lot of people skills involved, which I think I am good with people, I'll say that about myself. But yeah, there was, several different stakeholders in the organization that you had to pull together. And a lot of it was sort of legal and technical requirements of the products, because obviously
Mm.
financial products, are very technical. So it was getting to grips with that. So I definitely enjoyed working with people, but as I said, it was just lacking that creative aspect to the role. So yeah, it just felt not right for me, but I couldn't put my finger on why exactly. Um, and perhaps if I had have taken more charge of my career choices at that time, even within those organizations,
Mm.
then I could have explored that creativity more. And, there may have been areas in the organization that I could have done that. But typically it was on the side of just trying to organize, getting things done on time. And as I say, those are skills that have really served me well, but um, definitely lacking the passion that I have just now in my role. Mm-hmm.
Thanks for what you shared about your experience as a young child. I think so many people can relate to that. I've heard similar stories, and it's such a
Yeah.
shame when that happens. Did you always know that that was a pivotal moment where, you were discouraged actually from exploring your creativity, or when did that realization come?
Yeah, that only really hit me in the last year, I would say, Lizanne.
Wow.
Yeah, yeah, I didn't really analyze it at all, and um, it's taken, I think, a long time for me to come to that realization. I've never done therapy or anything like that, but I suppose I have been, I think, because I've set up my own business and because of the nature of my business, where your values and your reason why are so important to what you do. I
Mm.
help my clients to explore their brand in that way. It's kind of
Mhm.
forced me to think about my reasons why and how I've ended up here. So yeah, it was only
Mhm.
really recently that I kind of understood that, I had those limiting beliefs about myself for so long. And I suppose as well, growing up, so I grew up in Northern Ireland, and I suppose people don't like to kind of really put themselves out there too much. Or, I think even culturally, I think in Scotland and Ireland, we do shy away from the limelight to a certain extent. And my family background as well. So my dad was actually in the police in Northern Ireland. So we were very much kind of keep ourselves to ourselves sort of people. So yeah, I think there was a lot of, again, when I kind of look back at it now, I think there were a lot of limiting beliefs that I kind of grew up with all my life, that I'm really starting to push my own boundaries now about how I can break those beliefs and, grow as a person and grow as a business owner, be visible when obviously that's, something I think most of us struggle with as small business owners.
Mhm.
But I'm a naturally introverted person, but I'm pushing my own boundaries within within a way that I feel comfortable with, I suppose. And that's through things like, networking. Obviously, that's how we met, Lizanne.
Mm-hmm.
Attending the groups and the spaces that I feel that I can be myself in.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, all of these ways of kind of, breaking those beliefs in myself have been incredible, really, over the last year or two. I feel like I've really grown as a person and as a business owner.
Yeah, I think it's incredibly empowering to realize, I've actually had these experiences, and in some way, I think when we're young, there's just we have to protect ourselves, and we develop certain ways of thinking when we're so
Mm-hmm.
young. But then as an adult, being able to, like you said, challenge those beliefs and confront the truth about that, and exchange it for something that's actually that's true.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And sometimes it feels a little bit uncomfortable accepting that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I don't know if that's something that you've ever had to kind of work through, but I've found it really uncomfortable at times. But I think I'm coming
Mm-hmm.
through to the other side of it now, and also I have to say, working with like coaches and mentors. For me, that has been a huge part of my journey as well. So I really need to acknowledge that. Okay, I haven't had therapy, but I have had someone else to speak to along the way. I've actually had like 3 different mentors along my journey now, who've
Mm-hmm.
all offered something different, different perspectives and things,
Mm-hmm.
all brilliant in their own way. So, um, yeah, definitely would say for other business owners, especially creatives who can have this kind of mindset, that working
Mm-hmm.
with somebody like yourself to kind of offer that alternative point of view can be so helpful.
Mm-hmm. Thanks, Corin. Yes, I've definitely had my own experience with that as well, and have my own experience with working with a coach. And I think when we've got our own businesses, we're working in a very solitary way, and so
Hmm.
having someone that you can talk to actually just share these thoughts that you're having, or actually become aware of these thoughts that you're having, can be incredibly helpful. And someone who's there as a thinking partner to help you um, explore different ways of thinking, because the way that we think inevitably has such a big impact on the way that we work, and the way that
For
we
sure.
present ourselves. Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah, for sure. I think,
Mhm.
if you want to build a sustainable business, you need that resilience. So
Mhm.
yeah, I think
Mhm.
having somebody to help work with you to kind of pinpoint those areas where you're a bit
Mhm.
wobbly, can
Mhm.
make a huge difference.
Mhm. So you bring in resilience. I think as I'm listening to your story, other words that come up for me are courage and bravery, because I think it I can imagine it was a very brave step for you, stepping away from corporate, your retraining, starting a business. How did you take that first step?
Yes, so there was a little bit of a stepping stone that I probably skipped over earlier when I was trying to give a shorter version of my career. But so I worked for financial services, and then I actually took a career break with my kids for a while, which was obviously brilliant to be able to be at home with them,
Mm,
and spend that time during those early years.
mm,
But obviously, as they got a bit older and a little bit more independent, I was like, right, okay, I need to think about myself again now. And I just knew I didn't want to step right back into that world that I had been in. So that's when I started to think about, what do I enjoy? What's my passion?
mm,
Thought about different things, thought about copywriting, and I actually ended up getting a role with a small retail business. So that was a baby brand. And that was a brilliant stepping stone for me, because it was it was marketing in more of the pure sense in my eyes, because I was doing the doing, if you know what I mean. It wasn't just the project management side that working in the financial services arena had been. So yeah, I was able to get much more hands-on, and it was the design work that really lit me up. So, at that stage, it was just, Canva. And obviously this is, 6 years ago now. So, yeah, Canva was quite a new tool then, and, it was exciting and kind of learning how to put things together. So I really did enjoy that, but my role was mostly focused on social media, and I just knew I wanted to kind of go beyond that. So that's when I thought the time was right. In fact, it was after lockdown, really, that I decided this is what I want to do for a business. I want to be a graphic designer. I enrolled on a flexible college course that enabled me to get that qualification. And yeah, I decided to become a small business owner. I was very naive when I stepped into that world. I don't know, I just thought people will just find me and, I'll tick along. But you realize quite quickly that there's so much more to it, isn't there? So yeah, it's really pushing yourself every day. But yeah, about a year into offering graphic design services on a freelance basis, I realized that I want to work one-to-one with business owners to help them to really discover their brand, work with them to sort of dig deep on their brand values, their mission, and then collaborate on how we can show that creatively.
Yeah, you do incredible work, Corin. I love seeing your posts.
Thank you.
I think the one that comes to mind for me is the logo design you did for Cora Catch with a
Okay.
peacock. Yeah, and it's just so bright. The colors are beautiful, and I feel like it just captures her essence. When I saw that, I immediately thought, oh, this is so spot on. So I could
Yeah.
see that the work that you do one-on-one, behind the scenes, that's the end product. But I can imagine it takes a lot of back and forth and really getting to know the person to actually come to that end result.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I mean, there's a whole process behind it that people don't necessarily appreciate. And Kara's she had a great brand story as well, which is where the peacock idea came from, because she was going from kind of being known as a virtual assistant to something much more than that. She wanted to really expand her services. And I think it was one of her previous teammates had said she was like their support peacock.
That's
Which,
awesome.
yeah, it kind of came out of nowhere. But then apparently there was a story to it that it had been in the news that somebody actually had a support peacock on an airplane with them. They were entitled to bring their peacock with them because it was their emotional support peacock. So I just love this story. And it does sum Cara up because she is, she will say herself, she's quite a quirky individual. And the peacock just is a way of saying, she's so much more than just one thing, not just a virtual assistant. Not that there's anything wrong with just being a virtual assistant, but for her, she wanted to be known for something beyond that. So it just fitted in really well, and it was really fun to do. And yeah, the color palette's really cool and things as well.
Love
So
it.
yeah, I do love kind of really adapting my creative style to the individual that I'm working with or the organization that I'm working with. And I think, well, hopefully my portfolio does show that kind of range of different, approaches and styles.
And that's a very, very special skill because it requires you to listen, and also notice the subtlety and the nuance, and being able to put that in a visual format. I can imagine that a lot of your clients also meet you at a perhaps a pivotal moment in their lives, or at a moment of some sort of transition, whether it's within the business or
Mm.
personally. Is that the case?
Yeah, it is often the case. I mean, I suppose either they're starting a new business from scratch, so it's all very exciting, and they want to get off on the best foot possible in terms of understanding their brand and building up that whole visual identity. So they kind of appreciate that it's not just a logo; it's
Mm,
something more than that, something deeper than that. And,
mhm,
whilst I focus on the visual identity side of things, the work that we do beforehand on the brand strategy really does enable them, I think, to talk about their brand in a way that they feel confident about as well. So it just helps the whole piece be more aligned, between the kind of written communications and the visual side of things as well. It's
mm,
the whole piece. So yeah, either they're starting from scratch or they're pivoting, I guess, their own
mm,
brand, um,
mm,
or they've just realised that they want to take that next step to really grow the business and the brand. So yeah, it's generally at quite an important point in their journey, but it's lovely to be part of that as well. So
I think we as solo entrepreneurs, we need a whole team around us to support us, and I think you play an important role when it comes to that.
yeah, well, I myself do acknowledge, we've talked already about having a coach or a mentor, but I always kind of start every year thinking about what am I going to invest in this year for my brand,
Mm,
because
mm,
it's impossible to do it all on your own, isn't it? So
yeah.
yeah, having
Mm,
having that support in whichever area you think you need it most, then yeah,
mm,
absolutely, it's
so
it's so
important.
helpful. Hmm.
Yeah. So you're you said 2.5 years into your business. Have I got
Hmm.
that right?
Hmm.
So, I'm curious around how you see the entrepreneurship mindset and how that differs from corporate, because I think there's quite a difference there in terms of the way we tend to work in a corporate space versus when you're doing your own thing.
Yeah.
And sometimes it takes a bit of time to actually figure that out. Like you said in the beginning, you didn't have you didn't really know what you're getting yourself into.
Yeah, God, I don't
So
know if any of us do, but I mean, it hits you quite quickly though.
yeah.
Yeah, you can't really escape it.
Mm,
Yeah, it's a really different mindset. I think, um, you know, I suppose I did feel part of a team when I worked in corporate. I will definitely give it that. As much as I maybe didn't feel passionate about it, I felt part of a team. Whereas
mm,
that's so different now, isn't it?
mm,
It's very much kind of on your own day to day, other than when you choose to invest in that help in certain areas. But I think that's why, the idea of community is so important for us small business owners, solopreneurs, having, and fortunately for us, it's something that we really get to choose as well, like how we want to build that community, who we want to be connected to, who we want to give time to, and have that kind of reciprocal relationship with. Um, yeah, I love that community that I've been able to kind of build over the last couple of years.
mhm,
It's super important.
mhm. Yeah, no, for me too. I think that's really, really important. And for me as well, coming from South Africa,
Yeah.
initially, starting my business this side and feeling like I didn't have the network yet.
Hmm.
It can be so incredibly isolating. But then once you actually start reaching out and find your people in some way, it can be just so incredibly encouraging and life-giving and supportive.
Yeah,
Yeah, so
it's
I'm
made a
I'm
huge
also very
difference for me.
grateful. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, the Outsiders
Mm,
group that we're both part
mm,
of is just
mm.
one of my
Yeah,
favorites for sure.
yeah.
There's so many different networks here in Edinburgh that you can be a part of, and if time was no object, then I probably would try and get more. But I think that you have to kind of focus on for me, I think two or three
Mm.
that
Yeah.
you enjoy the most.
Hmm.
And I've heard a couple of people say when it comes to networking and these sort of communities, it's like, but it's the same people every time, so they feel like they're not growing their business if they're not speaking to new people every time. Whereas I feel like I like the fact that I mean, obviously it's great seeing new faces as well, but I love having the familiar faces as well. And it just means you can take that relationship to a deeper level, really, doesn't it?
Absolutely. It's the same for me. So how do we touch on the topic of time. You mentioned already keeping an eye on what your schedule looks like in terms of what you're saying yes to. So how do you do that? How do you prioritize what's important to you? Uh, how do you do it? I think everyone's different, and so how do you keep an eye on your schedule so that you can manage your energy as
Yeah,
well?
yeah. I tend to I kind of look at the bigger picture and work back the way. So I know roughly how many clients I can work with in a year, and then a month, and then, week to week. So I kind of work back that way. And that's based on, my income goals and what I need to get by and everything else. I don't want to overextend myself for the sake of it. I want to feel like, I'm in a job that gives me that balance that I need, for
Hmm.
myself and for my family. Um, we enjoy time off together when the kids are off school and things like that. So yeah, I tend to kind of do it that way, where I'm focusing on the bigger picture and then working back. And then day to day, I mean, I'm not really one for time tracking tools and things like that. I just kind of have my to-do list and my priorities, and focus on those. I roughly have an idea of how much time I can spend on each of those, but um, I think you can't always predict. Like you can block book 2 hours to do something, but you can't always predict exactly how that flow is going to go. I think for me, anyway, as a creative, sometimes the creativity comes really quickly, and you can get it done faster than that 2 hour block. But other times it just takes a bit longer, and um, you know, I think there may be evenings where I kind of choose myself to go back into the creative zone because maybe I've got a deadline, or maybe I've been feeling the flow that day and I want to keep in that flow. I don't want to wait until tomorrow and then, I might not feel quite as in the zone. So yeah, there's a little bit of peaks and troughs, but yeah, try and manage it, try and smooth it out a bit. And during the quieter periods, try to stay creative during that as well, through things like my own sort of passion projects, which I actually love doing passion projects. I don't know if you call them that. I heard the phrase a while ago and I was like, oh yeah, I like that, passion project.
I think
Um,
that works. Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
So it's just basically doing work that you enjoy yourself that's related um, to the job that I do, so that I can maybe use that in my portfolio, or just expand my skills a little bit. Yeah, I don't like to stay away from creativity too long. Um,
What are some of your passion projects?
so yes, especially when I was building up my portfolio, and at that stage, obviously, you're still trying to get more consistent business through. So I really love sort of retro inspired design, vintage sort of look to it. So quite a few of my passion projects will be brands in that sort of feel. Um,
Nice.
so yeah, I do love a nice vintage looking brand. Quite feminine, I suppose. I do mostly work with female small business owners. But yeah, I love the range. But yeah, if I've got time to kill, then that's usually where
Mm. You go
my,
to.
my creativity ends up being back in that zone. So
Mm. Yeah, thanks for sharing just your ideas around how you decide the work that you're willing to take on. and allowing for some sense of flow, also depending on whether the creativity arrives or not, how much time you need. I think that's often the case for creatives. And someone this morning mentioned an interesting concept to me, just that we're in some way we're building lifestyle businesses, and you speak to that, being
Mm-hmm.
able to take holiday with your family, making those decisions not only around your business, but what do you actually want your lifestyle to look like.
Yeah,
Uh,
absolutely. Yeah, I think it just wouldn't work for. I think I would rather be employed than have a business that didn't allow for that flexibility. What's the point otherwise? So yeah, I'd definitely build that flexibility into my business. And with the kids here, you just sometimes you don't know what one week to the next is going to look like. Whether that's because one isn't well. So, for example, my youngest daughter is actually off school unwell today. So, I have the reassurance that I'm working from home and it's not going to be a problem. I can support her with that. So, and then also my mum back over in Northern Ireland, I want to be able to fit time in to go and visit her, and likewise for her to be able to come over here. So if she's visiting, then I'll plan in a week where I'm not doing as much client work, for example.
Yeah, gives you that flexibility.
Mm-hmm.
So, Corin, yeah, you shared so many amazing things, lots of nuggets of wisdom, really. What would you offer to someone who's just starting out, who is where you were, 2.5 years ago? What advice would you offer?
I think for me, the main thing, and this obviously ties in again with the work that I do, is just to really understand your brand values to begin with. Because for me, that will make a lot of other things become a lot easier. So it will help to make your sort of sales and marketing decisions a bit easier. Writing marketing plans, thinking about a social media strategy, that kind of thing. If you can really understand your mission, your brand mission, your goals, your reason why you do what you do, and your values, then I think a lot of other things will fall into place. And you don't need to work with someone else to do that piece of work. You can, I believe that we're all creative in some ways. So we're all creative thinkers. You don't have
Mm-hmm.
to be a top class brand designer or copywriter for that matter, anything like that. We all have creative thinking in us. So
Mm-hmm.
for me, I think it's spending the time to do that on your business and your
Mm-hmm.
brand to get to grips with that. And then I think the other piece of advice I would say is something I've already said earlier, is just around not being afraid in the early days to invest in the areas where you need that extra support. And, for every person, I guess that will be something different, won't it? But for me, I don't think I will ever be without a coach or a mentor by my side. But again, that's probably me personally. I think I need that little extra, those kind of words from somebody slightly removed from your own situation. And I suppose the accountability that gives you as well as a business owner, having that other person alongside you, um, to kind of gently say, well, we spoke about this last time. What have you done about it? Or, to kind of push you along and push your boundaries, change those limiting self beliefs. So, yeah, those are probably the two main things that I would recommend. Um,
Mm-hmm. Thank you. That's very valuable. Maybe I can just add to the last bit. I think also having someone to celebrate successes with you,
yeah.
someone to witness your story.
Hmm.
I think that goes along with accountability. So when you put some things into practice and then you end up having a big win or
Yeah.
a small win or
That's so
something
true.
shifts.
That's so
Yeah.
true because we don't do it for ourselves. You kind of think, oh, yes, that's good, move on. You don't celebrate it. So, yeah, having that other person to do that with you is really important and kind of makes you appreciate much more the little wins along the way and the big wins.
Yeah, and to remind you also
hmm
of where you've been, how far you've come.
hmm
I think that's so valuable. Well, I've actually experienced that as being very, very valuable myself.
Yeah,
Yeah. Thanks so much, Corin. Really appreciate you coming onto the podcast and
you're so
sharing your
welcome.
story. I think a lot of people will relate to some of the things that you shared, and
I hope
I
so.
hope it
Yeah.
offers some encouragement. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Oh, it's been lovely. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thanks so much for having me.
Yeah. And I look forward to seeing you at the next Outsiders event.
Yes, yeah, there's always one at the end of the month, isn't there? So, yeah, if
Yes.
anybody wants
Something
to
to
come
look forward
along,
to.
then they can connect
Mm.
with you or
Hmm.
me and
Yes.
find out more.
Yes, absolutely. Thanks so much.
Thank you, Lizanne. Okay, take care.
Bye.
Bye bye.